Hey friends, welcome to this week's video. This week we're going over a camera that took me a little bit of time to get, but it's finally here and I'm extremely excited to look at the Insta360 link. Insta360 is a company where I use them for basically all of my action cameras, and it's a company that has done a lot in terms of innovating and doing cool things with lenses. So really excited to see them get into the webcam game, really excited the fact that it's pan tilt zoom, and I want to see how this compares to the rest of the competition out there. I will be doing slight comparisons here, but this is mostly a focus on the performance of this guy and a full breakdown, so get ready for a long video. So now that you guys have an understanding of the build and specifications of the link, now let's go into performance and understand how much quality can actually come out of this little webcam. From this point on, I will be using the video and audio out of the web camera in order for you guys to get an understanding of how good the quality is and if it meets your standards. A lot of this next part of this review will also be pretty much live, just because of the fact I want to show you how things behave and react, and if there's anything weird or quirky about the gestures, places that you might get caught up, and how to sort of problem solve if we do come into those issues. So that's the reason why it will be a little bit less edited, but hopefully this will be good for your understanding if this will meet your needs. Right now you are seeing this webcam in its stock form. Everything's auto, no color correction, no pan tilt zoom stuff going on. This is just literally plug it in and this is what you will see. As you can see from these colors here, pretty solid rendering. I will say that my skin tone is pretty much accurate, and then the background is maybe a little bit saturated and a little bit exaggerated, but it's not terrible. Like, it's not like some other webcams where I've seen them blow out highlights and overexpose and bring in these crazy colors. It's a pretty natural rendering, and this is without any crazy lighting. This is just overhead normal, light bulb lighting, and a couple windows here. I will be turning on a light, but before I talk about that, I do want to say that the lens itself does have some auto correction when it changes light sources. So if you add more light, remove light, it will try to figure out the best lighting scenarios and settings to give you the best image, especially if you're on those auto modes. It does take a little bit of time. So what I'm going to do is turn on this ring light here and then talk to you guys about how that kind of changes things. But it will take a little bit of time for it to adjust and settle into its settings. So bear with me. Okay, so you can see I'm a little bit more well lit. The ring light's on, but it does take a little bit of time to readjust everything, and I think right now. So it was a little bit overexposed initially, but it kind of brought it back down. In terms of the color in the background, that light just added the separation, so it did calm down those colors a little bit, brought out the colors in my skin a little bit better, and that's the reason why we love additional lighting. So if you are in front of the camera a lot and you care about your looks, additional lighting in the right areas are always encouraged so you can get the best skin tone for yourself as well as separation from your background. But overall, does a really good job. Again, a little bit of saturation here, or a little bit of warmness added to the image, but nothing that's gonna make you look worse, right? So very impressed with the colors, very, very. So what I will say next is probably gonna go into gestures. And these are the things that I've had, hit or miss with, but it's not a new thing that cameras, like I think pan tilt zoom is gonna be more of a standard going forward, but there's not a lot of competition, but I have tested one. You can see, check down the link here. These ones are a little bit finicky, so bear with me. But in terms of the first one is the auto tracking. So it'll blink blue and then it'll auto track. So from here, you can see it tracks my face pretty well. And it does track face. It's not your body, it's your face. So it's going to zoom in on that. Pretty solid, right? Where I will say is where it gets a little bit hung up is I think it's like when I turn around or if I move fast. So let me stand up and show you. So from this perspective, see, it already lost me just because I did a turnaround. It doesn't know where I am, but it'll find me again if I bring my face into it. So it should pan tilt zoom again. And again, even if you're further away, it'll try to figure it out. There you go. So yeah, overall pretty good. Especially if you're doing like sort of like talking using a whiteboard, you know, if you're a teacher that are doing a lecture. Walking around is obviously essential to keep pace and sort of attention. It'll do a good job with casual walks. However, you're trying to be very dynamic and flick. It'll lose it, right? Like if you move faster, it just won't track you. You can move like a little accelerated pace where it will catch up with you. But if you're trying to juke it out, it's gonna freak out. That was a terrible cut. That was a terrible cut. My friends would have freaking roasted me for that. But it can't track that. So it'll probably be a terrible corner because it would get burned all the time. But for everyone else's normal use case, this will be fine. I mean, you're just gonna be sticking in front of your screen and maybe, you know, move around, you get a drink and all that other stuff, but you want to stay on camera. It's going to be completely fine. And I think it has enough tracking where most people will be happy. And again, you can always shut it off if you want to actually get off screen. Relatively simple. Blah. See? Now we're back. Track again. Solid. See? So overall, I like that. That gesture works out perfect. Now let's move on to the zoom gesture, which is essentially this guy. And then you're just going to like move up. So it's like you have it register the L. Register the L. This is the struggle, dude. Let's try it again. It gets it for a little bit. And I wonder if it's just because there's a lot of brown. There we go. It's just a little bit up and then it'll zoom in. Same thing with the other one, it's just put the L, put the L. Man, it hates this thing. Oh, down. I'm gonna hold it here. Hello? Down. There we go. See, sometimes it pinches down. So this is the biggest one that's the problem. That was to show you. So hopefully if I'm back further away, I can pick it up. There we go. So it's just a little bit, it's like very subtle. And then it'll go down. Let's try this one more time. Hello? I'm doing the blue section of my body. There you go. See, it only does pan to. Come on, keep going, keep going. Let me try and do this like on my body. Nope. Hello? Still nothing. Does that do my face? I feel like it's getting caught up because I'm brown and my background's brown. Let me try to pan tilt zoom somewhere else. Let me try like a white surface here. Can you see this? No? Oh, you can. Skin tones. Ooh, oh no. Brown people are gonna have problems with this, huh? So you gotta do like, make sure that your skin tone, it can't really tell the difference. It's like the, you know, it's like those automatic syncs. Sometimes they can't get skin tone right, so it doesn't activate. So that is something that is interesting. So you do have to make sure there's a differentiation between your hand color and whatever you're looking at. You saw that was a little bit of struggle, and that is consistent. Like to me, I would test this a little bit, and I just couldn't get it to work consistently. I guess you have to have a white background or something that differentiates your hand tremendously, because it doesn't look for, it just looks for this, the contrast. So that's unfortunate. I will say that was it the OBSBot did a lot better with that. It doesn't have as much control in terms of like how this is registered. Like you can't like zoom, you can't choose the zoom out or zoom in. It kind of just cycles. But this one gives you a lot more control. The unfortunate part is it just doesn't seem very consistent. It's a little bit finicky to get. Ooh, like it'll blink and then it'll stop blinking. You're like, come on. Like even so close. Even so close. Try to get out of this one. Even so, there. Come on, even with the light, bro. Anyway, I feel like I've been finicking with that for a little bit, and I'll try it again at the end and see if I can get it to work. But yes, that's going to be finick for you. The next one that is going to be around is whiteboard mode. So I'm going to borrow my friend's sales sign and see if this works. And put it at an angle. What? Oh, wow, you guys see it lost me again. Come back. We're over here. Yes. We're here. Okay. So I'm gonna sit down so I can see that. Whoop. So you can see that I added that little poster there. My friend is a real estate agent. He has a poster here. And I'm gonna do a V sign, and it should focus in on that whiteboard. Find it? Ooh, doing things. It's doing things. Is it gonna zoom in? Is it gonna? Ooh, fancy. So that the V sign works pretty well. So you can see that it focused on that tremendously. The good thing too here is you'll notice that that is flattened out. If we take this away, can I take you away? Oh, can't tell you. So now, if you can tell, it's at an angle, right? So let me try to make that angle a little bit more crazy. You're crazy, man. Do not break. Let's see if we can do that. That would be insane. So we're back. We're going to do that again. Sign. Yellow mode. So it will flash yellow when it's looking. It'll look for those little tags that I put on that, and then it will try to render that whole image flat. So it is at an angle, kind of sideways, but let's see if it renders. It takes a little bit of time to do the registration. So if you are a teacher, you have to set it up. But bam! Look, flat render. It does some AI stuff to sort of make sure that it is a flat render. I like that. Microsoft Teams also does this, but I like how this is just all live. You don't need to take a picture. You don't need to do anything. It's solid. So for teachers, this is great. Or if you're like, reviewing a draft board or whatever you guys want to do where there's something in the background, as long as you have those little stickers on it, it'll be able to detect that. So if I do this, do I come back to regular life? Oh, do I actually be in the frame? So that was perfect. I like that. So those are the main gestures that you have. Again, the zoom one is a little bit annoying. Let me try this again. Hates me. Still hates me. There we go. Okay. Ooh, but it doesn't do it all the way. Try again. Oh, come on, zoom down. I just feel like I'm so close to this. I should be able to figure it out. There you go. Hey, it's not fully. Oh, now it's up. Oh, now it's not. Oh, now it's not. Oh, see, once I'm locked, it's good. Once I lose it. One more time. From far away. Thank you. It's really confused by the brown stuff, huh? Let me try to do it with this guy. Oh, yeah, it needs contrast. Cool. I go up. Hey. I go down. Go down. Hey. Okay. So that's the biggest thing that we learned there, is that you need contrast between your backgrounds, otherwise you can't figure it out. I'm sorry, I'm brown and my walls are brown, but it can't do that. So things to consider when you're using those gestures. That's just a way to troubleshoot. Just put something behind it that'll help your hand be differentiated. So some of the other features that are available to you are going to be like whiteboard mode. And then once we start getting into that, that's when it kind of gets finicky, and I got to start using the actual like application. And because it's not gesture based, it's not really something I can access. So I do want to show you guys what's available in the app. So let's move on to that part of the demo. So now that we have this application open, let's talk about the link controller software. This is something that you can download off the Insta360 website and will be quintessential for you to get access to all of the controls inside of your Link webcam. Not everything can be accessed through gestures, so you will need this application to do color grading, access other features of the camera, and just really be able to hone in on that image that you want. So go down to the website and download that. It's also going to be very, very important for firmware updates, as that's where all of those are pushed through as well. But let's look into this app. So you'll see that it has this preview where you can see my face. That is just a preview, not necessarily the final quality, but it does give you a good reference point as you change the colors and the perspective of this camera. You can shut that preview off, especially if you're using this for something like OBS. So there's no sort of conflict in there. You can shut this off. You can still adjust your image and all that sort of stuff through this application. However, that preview will be used for OBS and whatever device you're using. Here you can degrade the quality. Again, most of us will live in 4K, but maybe you need to go down to 1080p to, fit within the compliance of a certain video platform, or you are having network issues and you want to use less bandwidth, might be able to go down to 1080p. So they do give you that toggling issue, which I guess is nice. Down here is most of the gestures that you see. So auto tracking I have on. Whiteboard mode, obviously we talked about that through the gestures, but then you have two other options here that don't give you those same gesture controls, so that you have to use the application for this. The two ones that we have here are desktop mode and overhead desktop mode, and sort of a slight version of that. So on the overhead mode, ideally you have a tripod or something that's hanging above so you can show. This is really good for people that do unboxings. And what's nice is that you don't necessarily have to have two cameras. You can kind of achieve both perspectives as long as you set the camera up right. So I don't personally have a tripod for this, but I'm going to sort of simulate this. So like, let's say I had a tripod and I'm going to show my desktop, or just my table. So I can still talk to you about what I'm unboxing, and I'm going to be able to click that and show you my table. Right now, all it is a decal of Iron Man. And that's just really nice because I can switch between these to you. And then if I'm going to do something, I'll go back. Similarly, it doesn't fully require you to put your camera at 90 degrees. Another way that you can do this is their desktop mode, I think it's called. Desk view mode. Yeah. So then it just points it at a 45-degree angle. So let me clear off my table a bit. When it does that, be sort of close to 90 degrees, but just as much as it can show without showing the base of the camera. So here, maybe you want to just show, like, I don't know, the box. Again, another unboxing thing. Or maybe you want to show you building a keyboard and, oiling your keyboard. Like, to me, this is really cool for all those people that do those sort of keyboard construction or custom keyboard builds, their streams and stuff. They could easily switch between the two without any hassle. So I think that's a great feature. And if you haven't watched one of those, it's oddly therapeutic. So definitely check that out. And they definitely set up multiple cameras. This might be able to save them some time. Obviously, you have some screenshot and recording features. I am currently recording through OBS so you guys can see the entire screen, but if you wanted to just use this as a recording suite, you can. And then you have gimbal control. Again, you can do a little bit more granular changes. So if you want to show something to the side and avoid the tracking, you can. Same thing with up. If you want to do more sweeping motions, you can use the dial in the middle. Whoop, whoop, whoop. And then you can also adjust zoom. So all those things are available to you, so you don't have to be stuck into the tracking, but for now, I'll just keep in the tracking mode. As we get into the image settings, here's where you can get a little bit fancy with how you want things to render. Obviously, they have some sliders even for the auto modes, so you can compensate accordingly, make it super exposed, super not exposed. And you'll notice that it's a gradual change because it does make those changes within the lens, which is nice. That's why you get a little bit better quality. However, if you take that off, you can actually change a lot more. So you can change the ISO. Again, ISO will, the higher you go, the more grain that will be there, but you'll get a brighter image, and the lower you go, the more sharp the image will be, but you may not be able to see everything. So you can adjust your ISO accordingly. If you are used to, cameras and things like that, you'll know how to change that. And then same thing with shutter speed. You can compensate for sharpness with shutter speed, but it will, the less you go, or the lower you go, the less light is being let in. So that's something that you can also use. So if you're used to using DSLRs, you will know how to kind of balance out your ISO and shutter speed to get you the image that you like. The other thing that I like here is that they do give you an exposure curve. If you're used to Premiere, you should know how to use this pretty well, but it does give you the ability to bring out highlights and shadows accordingly. So if you wanted to make it look like more like a Brio, you could just make everything flat. But if you wanted to bring a little bit more depth in, you have a little bit more control over that. And I do like that because you can see the live changes that it makes, and you can kind of tune it in to dial in your exact settings that you like. Same thing with auto balance. For white balance, you can introduce the kelvins to make it a more warmer color, or you can make it bluer if you want to get into the avatar life. But it just basically just changes your color temperature depending on what you prefer. If you want to be more warm or cold, you can change that. Again, brightness, contrast, saturation, same sort of stuff. Whatever image you want. I do like that they give you a little bit more clarity, as well as the UI is really nicely performed in terms of what it looks like. Like, I've seen some of these and everyone just uses generic like Windows 98 sliders. I like the fact that they've made their own to render it rather than using some random stuff. And the nice thing about this is you can set a preset. That is something I did mention, and I forgot to mention in the gimbal area too, is there's preset controls. So if you are a teacher and you will often show something next to you, you can create that gimbal change this way. And if you want to make this your perspective, you can set that preset of position 1. So then if you reset this guy and you go to position 1, it'll remember to go there. See? So you can always change it back and have those presets, which is nice. So now that we've went over that, basically we get into the back end side. For this review, I've kind of been cutting off gesture settings just so I don't accidentally activate something. I tend to talk with my hands. So if you're a hand talker and you make sort of motions that might trigger something, you have the option to shut them all off. You also have the option to shut them off periodically. So like maybe you don't want to deal with the zoom because it's annoying, you can shut it off. Or if you make peace signs to your audience, maybe you don't want to do that because there's no whiteboard for it to search for. So you can selectively deactivate them as well. As we move into, I'm going to shut those off for now. As we move into the zoom features, this is kind of where, if you don't want to deal with the finagly zoom that we did, you can actually have the system figured out. So if we do head, it'll zoom closer into my face, and just no matter where I move. So since I have auto tracking on, I can do this. Whoop. See, so if I'm talking in a lecture and I want to keep people locked in, I can have those conversations and it will zoom in. It's a little bit jerky sometimes depending on how fast you walk, but if you're doing relatively smooth, it should be smooth with you. So that's really nice that it compensates for that. You can also do half body. So again, if you want a little bit more perspective, you talk with your hands a lot, you want to be able to show a little bit more in terms of your surroundings while you talk, then it'll be very nice because you can also change that. And then if you're a teacher or some lecturer and you want to show like the whiteboard or something, you can put it to body, and body's going to bring in your body. So maybe you want to show your fit. You want to see the lower half of your body, or you want to show a whiteboard that's here. It'll give you a lot more flexibility to show that sort of stuff because it's showing a lot more as a result. So the zoom will work with you, and it works pretty well. And I will say that this is probably what I would recommend using rather than the gesture functions, just because the gesture functions can be a little bit goofy depending on what your skin color is and the backdrop that you have behind you. So I'm going to shut this off because I won't need that zoom as much. I just need the tracking. Some other settings you have are auto anti-flicker. If you have like a screen behind you, it can compensate. Auto is probably fine. Tracking, again, depending on how you want to track it. You know, if you want to do slow roll and you want to be a little bit more cinematic where there's a slow follow, that's something that you can do. It's a lot better in terms of tracking, in terms of like not jerking around your audience. But normal is where it's usually, I think that's generally where most people will be. So it'll keep you more in the center rather than doing a slow follow with you. And then fast, obviously we've talked about this before. It will track you faster. It might be a little bit more jerky. You see that like there's some jerky mode, but there might be also a chance that you can juke it out and it'll get confused. See? So it's not so fast. Woo! There you go. It's not so fast where it'll be able to keep up with you perfectly, but it's still fast enough where most everyone will be able to use it. Focus, again, autofocus is fine, but maybe if you're doing like an unboxing or you're doing something like keyboard construction, you might want to do manual focus just so that as your fingers move in and out, it won't get wonky. So having a manual focus might be good if you want to just lock focus in a certain place and that, you know, external factors don't mess up where you want your audience to focus in. So it's nice because it gives you some cinematic options there. Streamer mode is cool because it does increase your FPS, I believe. What? And I think it allows you to do like vertical video as well. Nothing that I've tested. You can also introduce HDR. I personally don't use it because it's not supported in 4K for some reason. Hopefully they change that within firmware update, but I would appreciate HDR 4K. And mirror imaging, and if there's something that you want to be able to show, but I don't know why you would actually want to mirror this because it's actually showing the text well, but if you want something backwards, if you want to see how your face looks to everyone else, that's weird. And then, as I mentioned before, firmware can be updated here. They will tell you if you need an update. So that's an always nice feature, but also a reason why you need to download this application. So now that we've talked about the application full all throughout this whole thing, let's move on to comparisons to some other webcams that I have on me. So as a baseline, we'll use a 2018 MacBook Pro just to show a webcam that's inside of a screen and show the native mics and see how they perform. Overall, you can see that the image is very, very grainy, even with the assistance of LED lights or key lights, as well as, you know, more ambient lights for the color that you see in the background. There's a lot of grain on my face, there's a lot of grain on my shirt, there's a lot of grain kind of everywhere. You really can't avoid it. And it gets worse as I shut things off, right? So as I shut off the lights, you'll see a lot more grain because there's not that assistance. Things start getting mushy a little bit more. And I'm going to turn on those lights back and shut off my key lights. And this is where you see a lot of mush. Like, if not for the backlighting, my face probably be really washed out and worse. However, you definitely see all of that background in terms of like that painting just starts losing all of its details. The ukulele just looks more of like a shadow blob over there, and a lot of that's gone. So then if I went completely off, everything's gone. There's no details. It can't pick up any light. It's just my face, and it's super, super noisy in terms of like what you can see. There's just grains everywhere, and it really just emphasizes my face. It does a lot better job about bringing out details because it has to, because of the limited light, but overall, this is not something that you could deal with. So generally speaking, that's the reason why a lot of people get external webcams, because they want a little bit more quality that works for a lot more scenarios. So let's move on to the Brio and see what that will help with. So now that we've moved on to the Brio, have a listen to the sound samples while I talk to you about this image. If you can see overall, the field of view is about the same as the MacBook, but I will say that you have the ability to change that. You can go a little bit tighter if you want to just focus on your face, but the best one is you can go a little bit wider. And the benefit of this is not just because it gives you a lot of time, a lot of space to sort of talk, use your hands and all those sort of things. It also seems to be a better image in terms of rendering, of sharpness and things like that. What I've noticed with the 78 is that it sort of has a little bit, or maybe it's just because it's more emphasized of it, has a little bit issues with autofocus. I look very, very soft right now. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of eye sharpness that is helping bring life to my eyes. So that's an unfortunate portion. You kind of see it in the 90 as well, but it's less obvious because it is further away. So I would normally live here if I was to use this web camera, but for comparison's sake, we're going to keep it at the 78 to show you guys that. The thing that I will also say is that they do a little bit of weird processing here. So their color science and their contrast can get kind of out of whack depending on what the color settings are. So here you see that I'm very like kind of washed, like my face is like has a film on it because it doesn't have that much detail or distinction on it. And I think they do some sort of masking where it smooths things out and the imperfections of my face aren't present. Like I don't really see myself like I don't really see the foreheads, my forehead wrinkles when I'm emoting, or the lines of my face when I'm talking, and it's a little bit alien, as well as the fact that they do a weird combination of saturating colors and desaturating colors. So right now I feel like I'm pretty desaturated, my skin tone isn't quite right, this shirt doesn't have the same brightness to it or the same vividness to it as it would, but if some very obvious colors like my Halloween costume there are very, very vivid. I've also noticed that in direct sunlight this Brio can't deal with skin tones at all, as I look like an Oompa Loompa in direct sunlight, and I'm just very, very orange, and it can't really compensate for that unless I go into the app and manually adjust that. So that is something that I also do not like about how they render these things. But let's start playing with lights and see how the image performs. Right now there's not a lot of noise in this image, which is nice. Everything's pretty solid, pretty sharp, definitely usable in a lot of scenarios, especially if you're just doing meetings. But let's cut the bedroom lights off. So here's where you kind of see where the depth issue is with this, because while the colors and things like that I have issues with, the depth is also an issue. It's like I have two key lights with different brightnesses to give me some shadow and depth to my face, but you can also see that they try to compensate with that exposure in the background so that it can be seen. But it's definitely way darker back there, and as a result I'm sort of blending into my backdrop, and I can't really get that separation and level in terms of depth perception. So it kind of makes the image look less interesting as a result. From there, let me shut down, or let me turn back on the lights, and then I'll turn off the key lights. Fine, I'll do it this way. And from here you can see this is where you can kind of see like the colors washing together. It's kind of a weird mix, and I look a lot softer as a result. Don't really like that. And then if I were to shut off the bedroom lights too, this is where the separation finally happens, and you kind of see the shirt get a little bit more vivid in color, and there's actually lines on my face. So it's weird because like the dark setting works, but it also introduces all this noise. There's noise all over my face, there's noise all over the image on my shirt and everything, so you get a degraded quality, but there's certain characteristics that are redeeming about it, like the color science that gets changed, some of the contrast, and yeah, less masking. So there, it's strange. I would never shoot this because this looks like a really crappy Netflix horror movie about like a chat room murderer, but it does have some redeeming qualities, ironically. But let's move finally to the Insta360 link and hopefully get the best performance of all these. So as we move back onto the Insta360 link, you'll notice that the field of view does seem a little bit more punched in, and that's probably the biggest downside compared to other competitors. And unfortunately, there's nothing I can do in the back end to resolve that because I am maxed out on the zoom settings. So you will be giving up a little bit of FOV. However, you will be getting a lot better image quality. From what you can see here, there's just a lot less noise. It's a lot sharper, so like even eye sharpness is really, really good here. But in terms of depth, color vividness, accuracy, there's just a lot better things coming out of the link than we see with other competitors out there. So an example here that's really nice is the fact that like my skin is accurately exposed and it's also accurately colored. This shirt has a lot more green than it did in some of the other renderings that we saw from the Brio and the MacBook, as well as like in terms of like my lines on my face and the characteristics of my face as I emote, it's a lot more human. There's not that film. It just has those lines, it has those human aspects to it that just makes it look a lot better. Ideally also it gives you a little bit more depth and shadows because of the fact that it can differentiate light a little bit better. So like from this side of my face, you'll see a shadow because of the fact that that key light isn't as bright as the other one. So I like the fact that I can bring that in and show the shadow to expose that side of my nose and things like that to give my face a little bit more depth. The other depth that you will see as we change the lights around is that the separation of me as the subject versus my background. Even with this lighting where there's some help in the background from my overhead lights, you'll still see that there's a better separation between me and whatever's back there, because of the fact it can actually render depth a little bit better, and it doesn't try to mask or overexpose things to make it visible. It just accurately provides that depth. So I think you'll be able to use this footage for a lot more than just mediums. I think if you got creative, you could probably use this as actual like A-roll, if you're in a pinch, or if maybe you're trying to shoot a review or shoot your videos when you're in a hotel room and you don't have all your gear. I think that this will still provide some very good image for that purpose. So let me start playing around with lights and show you guys the differences here. Let's start by taking out the back lighting. So from this perspective, you see this is where you can really see the differences. It's actually dark back there. I am a lot more present. Shadows are a lot more present in terms of showing on my face. And there's just a lot more separation and depth to this shot. So I really like how this is shown here and how that the Insta360 does that. So I'm gonna turn those back on and kill the key lights. From this perspective, I do become a lot more pink. However, they do bring in that subtle backlight from the screen very well as the fact that even all the details in the back of the screen is still pretty good. We were seeing noise in some of the other cameras that we were looking at, but here it does seem to be retaining pretty good sharpness around those corners and things like that. And on my body and my face, I don't really see all that much grain as well on this preview, at least. So we're going to turn back on, or we're going to turn off the backlights now. And now we have the more intimate lighting. So even with this, I can still make out that corner pretty clearly. I can bring out that painting, and it's just not a mushy mess. There's noise in there that has been introduced, but not so much where it's super distracting. In terms of myself, there's a little bit of noise on my shirt, but my face is pretty well exposed, as well as the fact that the colors are actually very nice. So the greens are good. My skin makes me look tan. And overall, I'm not getting a ton of distraction in that shot. It's still very sharp, especially if I look into my eyes. So the focus is still being able to maintain its quality even through the lack of light. So obviously, this is still horror film sort of things, but this is like an A-class horror film, not like a B-class Netflix crappy film, So upper quality, even in low light, it's a pretty good performer. But I know you're probably wondering about if you should buy this after this. So let's go into recommendations on buys. So the Insta360 Link. What do I think? Well, my brain kind of falls into two camps here. One, it's an easy recommendation because that half-inch sensor gives you amazing image quality with good colors, as well as the microphone performs a lot better than most other webcams out there. So it gives you just a lot of good quality in a small package. Again, obviously, you can't beat a DSLR and a proper microphone, but in terms of just the versatility, this thing is great because of the fact that it just has that flexibility. You can use this to do lectures. You can do this to do meetings. It has nice enough quality where you can use the image for streaming, or you can use it for, A shots. Instead of use your B-roll, use this as your talking film. Like, that's just going to be amazing because you can just use that for video production as well as the fact that they add like the whiteboard mode, they add the keyboard mode. Like, video creators are going to have a lot of fun with this one just because it's going to give them a lot of flexibility without having to set up like thousands of cameras and be able to switch between. Like, you'll be able to do that through some pretty easy button clicks or gestures to get that variety of shots. And for people who are doing lectures, you can walk around and have more engagement with your audience and still like focus on things without losing a step. So I think it's a really good recommendation if you can afford it and it meets your use case, because you're really not going to get much better image quality out of a webcam. And this kind of comes where my trepidations are. Again, it's pricey. It's a little bit more expensive than other webcams out there, as well as the gestures are not quite there. So as we struggled with, the zoom gesture is very skin tone sensitive. You need some contrast there. It's not the most reactive thing. So they probably can fix that in a firmware update, and I hope they do. So that's always good. The other thing that they probably need to fix in a firmware update is just the ability to follow. Again, I'm no college athlete. I'm no NFL athlete. Those weak cuts should not be confusing the camera. I was just running just jumping across the screen, and it still couldn't follow me. I still think that pan tilt zoom should be a little bit more performative.
And the reason why that all this sort of makes sense is because at this price point, I would expect that performance to be there because they have a direct competitor in the OBSBot that is cheaper and performs faster on their pan tilt zoom. So, and their gestures are better. So that's something that I want to do in a future review of this guy versus the OBSBot, because they're very close, and one's cheaper, doesn't have quite the crispness in quality of the image, but they're very, very close, and the other one is $50 cheaper. So I will have to get that camera back from Samika because I gave that one to her in hopes that this would take over, but I'm gonna have to do a head-to-head comparison, so that's coming up. But if you guys are looking to do and buy this right now, I still think most of you will find this useful, because I don't think you're going to be using zoom features a lot. I don't think you're going to be running around your house. So because of the quality and everything about this, I think it's an easy recommendation for most people, as long as you can afford it. I will say, if you want to buy this though, buy it on Amazon. Don't buy it directly from Insta360. The reason why this took me so long was because I bought it straight through them when it first came out, and then they lost the package, and then they interrogated me about it. I didn't really appreciate that from their customer service, and I don't hope to encounter their customer service again as a result. But buying this through Amazon is easy. Like, I got my package in 2 days, and I don't have to worry about returns and all that other stuff, because Amazon's great with the logistics portion of it. Insta360 is great at making the camera, just not delivering it. So I would suggest using, you know, Amazon unless there's some kind of special deal through Insta360. But anyways, thank you guys so much for sticking around for this long video. I know these ones like take a while, but yeah, you know, if you could, please consider liking, subscribing, commenting, doing all the things you normally do on a video that you like and love. And for my OGs, thank you so much for sticking around with the streams, sticking around with the content, and helping me drive what I'm doing in terms of the next product to look at. So definitely keep those in the comments, and I'll look at those. But I'll see you guys very soon. And as always, appreciate you. Peace.